Hello, hello. It is rather late, rather tired, but I felt compelled to do another one of these sort of free flowing conversations, a kind of thinking out loud, a meditation in the moment. Because it's a deep sense of peace that I find, really, especially when I don't have to script it out and read off a script. I can instead just read out the thoughts as they arise in consciousness. And there's a kind of beautiful kind of authenticity to that, and being able to just step back and relax into your expressions, your experience. It's often a habit I find of myself, particularly in the past, to filter and conceal my authentic expression. There's a kind of evaluating egoic thought that creates a kind of pause which assesses, do I say this thing or that thing? Is this the right thing to say or is that the right thing to say? Something that would often manifest, say, in social situations when you're conversing with people. And it's definitely a kind of mode of being in the world where you are slightly dissociated from your intuitions. Your intuitions is that part of you which knows how to do something, but doesn't quite on a kind of linguistic or verbal level understand how it is that one is able to do it. They just know how to do it. Say for example, shifting your eye gaze from one thing to another. You just know how to do it. You have a intuitive, non-propositional way of knowing how to do it. And our intuitions, they're kind of they're deep. They're in our cells, essentially, almost. And often we neglect just how powerful they are. You know, we live our lives so often just in our heads, according to this nattering ego, this nattering voice which is telling us what to do next. And I feel that when we are able to live our lives more in alignment with intuition, we find that intuition, it doesn't have a voice to it. Often intuition is a silent process. And when we slip into our intuitive mode of being, there's a kind of oneness. Our thoughts can create the illusion of a fragmented experience, a fragmented oneness. Thought invents time, it invents past, present, and future. It invents categories, the idea of the ego, the idea of a separate observer. Thought can create pain, create suffering, create desire, attachment, illusion. Thought, it's easy to vilify thought. But there is a purpose to thought. Thought is nature describing itself. It's a looping that nature is doing with itself. Recursion, self-reference. But when we don't acknowledge this sort of recursive factor of thought, that it is a kind of loop, we can end up getting caught in the loops, caught in cycles of behavior. karmic cycles, and we live our lives doing the same thing over and over. And because we think that this is the only way to be, it's the only way to think, this is often the root of addiction. Addiction is this recurring cycle of behavior, the cycle of desire, of thought, contraction of one's being, and narrowing of their being into this regular pattern. When we find ourselves trapped in these cycles, we find us almost forgetting who we are, forgetting our kind of infinite nature, our nature as being that is ultimately free to move and transform. There's nothing, the only traps that really exist are in your mind. It's in the limitations that you create for yourself by thinking in the case of addiction that one requires to do or consume a certain thing. We trap our expressions often with thought. And it's interesting how the way to inverse this, the way to reverse this sort of limitation of expression with thought is to move into a more intuitive way of being, a more silent way of being, a silent way of being where you are letting go of the ego, which often tries to force our experience. Our ego, which sort of thinks, I need to do this thing, and then it sort of forces our being to do that thing, even if it's not necessarily the most aligned or intuitive thing to do. We're moving from this position of a voice telling us to do certain things. But if you wish to sort of move from a more intuitive way of being, a way of being which I think is much more harmonious, much more peaceful, much more present and truthful, you find that when you are moving intuitively, you are moving silently. There isn't a nattering in your head. Your mind rather is empty of thought, and you do still have thoughts. You can still think and speak, but you are speaking from silence into the flow you're creating in the moment. You're not trapped in time. Like when I record these videos and I'm speaking just free flowing, often at the very end of it, I'm almost completely unconscious of what I've said, because that's the nature of the flow. You're not thinking about past or future or even the present. These categories, these words, they cease to be a relevant thing. And what is occurring is a spontaneously arising natural creation. And this natural creation is a tapping into the source of your being, right? You're not thinking, I'm a human being or I'm recording a video. You're just being with what is, and you're emptying yourself. And when you empty yourself, and what I mean by empty yourself, you're emptying yourself of your ego, your thoughts, your attachments, your idea that you need to say or create a certain thing. When you empty yourself of all of that, you become this spacious vessel, and the spacious vessel is filled with source or reality, God, divinity, the Tao, whatever word, or Brahma, whatever word you wish to do. Many different spiritual traditions, they will use different pointers to who you are, essentially, because it is always just you. But the pointers that you can tap into this boundless fountain of creation at any time. Where do your thoughts come from? They sprout out from the void, out of nowhere. A void, and then a thought that has a certain lifespan, right? It arises, persists for a bit, then naturally dissolves itself. And it's absurd. Many people will try and think really hard to get a certain insight, but it often has a sort of a paradoxical effect of making it even less effective to think. So much of our insights come as just sort of spontaneous arisings that occur at unexpected times. When we're in the shower or something like that. And it's interesting. It's like in those sort of modes of consciousness, in those spaces of consciousness, you're not forcing anything. You're letting go. You're entering into a relationship of receptivity. That's it. Your ego is becoming receptive. Your ego is letting go of trying to force experience and is trying to say, okay, I'm going to withdraw. And when you withdraw, you're kind of just accepting what is. You're accepting the moment simply as it's arising without trying to put conditions on it. And when you do that, the magic happens, right? The magic happens. The magic of creation, of experience, of reality, and its natural harmonics of change, which we participate in. We participate in as conscious beings, and we can bend it, we can morph it, we can play with it. That's a beautiful thing, really. And yeah, I think I'll leave that at that. Hope that's been interesting. Adios. Goodbye. I'll see you guys again someday in the future, wherever that thing is. Anyway, goodbye.